Okay, I have a quote from, I think it's from Ernest Hemingway, but I know you can't trust everything you see on the internet. But I'm going to read it anyway. It says, I think it sums up both our books. One says there are two kinds of stories, the ones you live and the ones you make up, and nobody knows the difference. And I don't ever tell which is which. So I think mine is a memoir, which is non-fiction, and the Bina's is fiction.
Mine is fiction, and I'm not going to tell you which part is fiction and which part is autobiography.
So I'll introduce my book first and why I wrote it. I moved to Goa during the pandemic, and in the beginning of the pandemic, when I lived in Bombay, I started blogging because I felt it was we were living through a strange time. There were Zoom parties, and there were toilet paper crisis, and there were many different things that were very strange. When I came to Goa, I continued to vlog. And when I moved, a lot of other people moved to Goa as well. There were people from all over the country who were living in Goa, moving to Goa, buying in Goa. And I also heard from many people who were Goans by ancestry, but they had never lived here. And they were looking to sell their property. And I think Goa changed a lot during the pandemic, at least in my understanding. And many people asked, how does it feel to be in Goa? You're a Goan in Goa, it's changing so fast. So I wrote a tongue-in-cheek blog about being Goan, and that has evolved into a one part of a chapter in my book called What's So Special About Goans Anyway. Many people then encouraged me to write like your My Year in Provence kind of story. And so I started thinking about all the things that influenced me, all the things that were happening in Goa, Seoli in particular, because that's where I inherited a house. The house was built by my grandfather's grandfather. I lived in many places and then extended it while I was living in Bangkok and London. And then finally moved here in 2020. So I was thinking about all the things and all the changes that I had experienced. And then it sort of evolved, and then I have this book. So that's why it's called Becoming Goan, a contemporary coming home story.
Yeah, so let me tell you the story of Starfish People. So basically, way back in 2002, I started writing a story, and I was in Ogilvy and in the art department, and I would dabble in copywriting once in a while. And it was just for kicks, basically. And when it was done, and when I was supposed to send it out to publishers, it's like my life came apart. My marriage ended, and I came to Goa with my little daughter, who's 7-year-old. And then from then on, my life was just about designing. Because I kind of came here and I had to first pull my life together and get my finances straight. So the only way I could do that was design. So obviously, this little pet project of mine was forgotten, and Starfish Pickle was left in some corner of my computer. And it stayed there for many years. And I would keep looking at it like, once a year, maybe for a few days or like a week when I would get some time off. And I would keep updating it. When I started writing it, I mean, there was no Facebook, for instance, way back in 2002, 2003. And things changed, even mobile phones changed. So I had to keep updating my story to just keep it up with times. Finally, in 2018, I got off my butt and I got in touch with a few literary agents, and one got back to me. And to cut a long story short, it got published in 2021 in the middle of the pandemic. And for all my patience and perseverance, I got a movie deal. So that was a good thing. The movie was produced by T Series, and it showed in all the major metros. Unfortunately, it couldn't come to Goa, but like, thank God for me because it's majorly screwed up. Um, it's on Netflix right now. If you want to see it, it's called Starfish, loosely based on my book Starfish People. Starfish Pickle is a fiction story, and it tells the story of Tara Salgaonkar, who is this young commercial diver who comes from Bombay to her ancestral home in Saligaon. And through Tara's exploits, I've tried to show a side of Goa that most people don't see. Like, what happens to tourists who drown on the beach and how the divers, either from the Navy or from dredging companies, have to pick up their remains. Then the flip side of all the partying and the drugs. And I've also tried to show a Hindu Goa because, in my experience, a lot of the English writing on Goa deals with the Catholic Goa. So I've tried to show a Hindu family, and I've tried to show how a lot of the Hindu Goa, it's very conservative on the inside, and although it tries to portray a progressive front outside. So Tara basically rebels against all this, and that's what the book is about. And since I'm art director, so I've illustrated my book and I'm giving away some prints which you can pick up with the book. That's
Thanks, Bina. I really enjoyed Starfish Pickle. It gave me an insight into this world of deep sea diving and also this whole trans Goa that I knew nothing about. So, is the writing autobiographical or did you do a lot of research? And how is the book a manifestation of Goa and Goan life and Goan village life?
so we started off saying that we're not going to tell what is what. But yeah, so the trance music bit was like a obsession during my young adult years, my late college and advertising years. And that kind of coincided with trance becoming big in Goa.
When was this, in the 80s or 90s?
90s, early
Okay.
90s. And I would say I had to do a lot of research for the dredging bit, the commercial diving bit, and I mostly did it, what a difference between internet now and internet then.
No internet, when you had to go to a library.
No, but 2002, and because I was at Ogilvy and I had like fancy internet at work, I would be, yes, I would do my work, but I would be doing research for my book. And I had subscribed to all these e-zines were big then, from US and UK about commercial diving and dredging. And there was no concept of paywalls. Can you imagine that? So yeah, I did all my research. And the book I believe is a manifestation of this tiny strip that runs from Sikeri to Arambol. And so much happens on that strip. So that's what it is.
So tell us about this whole trans thing and how, the dichotomy between this whole trans and party Goa and the very religious Goa that you talk about, and that Tara is continuously sort of torn between, I think, many different worlds. And how you feel the trans Goa and the religious Goa have some sort of relationship.
Yeah, so there is, I would say Goa Trans happened because of now.
Sure.
Okay. So I'm not very good with mics. So if I'm loud enough,
You have to
okay.
basically, like, you're eating them out with the mic.
Okay, okay. Now better? Okay. So the trance Goa, I would say trance music took off in Goa and maybe no other place elsewhere. It started here because of the religious Goa. So in Goa, we still believe in animism, we still have paganism, and when the music scene started, the full moon party started, they found support among the tribals, among the people on the beach belt. And they were they fully understood because here in Goa, like sitting, Zatras and Zagors are like a full on religiously sanctioned trance party. There's a bonfire, people are walking over it with their bare feet. You have to be high and drunk to do that. And then, like, you'll be beating a drum and you'll be singing and that's being high, that's being in a state of trance. So, yes, that's why I think trance took off in Goa. And yet, there is a section of the Goan populace who look down upon it because they were more cultured and they believed in different belief systems. So that was the dichotomy. But trance is very much at home in Goa. So
Thanks.
Yeah.
I had no idea about the origins and the similarities between the original indigenous beliefs and this kind of thing and trance. I thought it was some kind of colonial or party culture, but it sort of seems that it's evolved
It evolved here.
collaboratively. So in Seoli also we have the Zagor, which I mention in my book, and again it has its origins in when you worship the earth and you didn't want the water to come in for your fields and things like that. So that's one more thing I learned about when I was researching my book. There are so many legends in Seoli in terms of humans. I mean, there are many people who we know about who are important in Seoli. You hear about Remo, you know about Alexi, Savio John, who's the designer. There's St. Anthony's Church. It's the only place where St. Anthony and the snake is there. There's a statue of Beethoven.
Yeah.
There's the Sanjiao. So when I was looking at the book, like you're saying, each village and each temple has, something specific about which is different to
Yeah.
the rest of Goa. For my book, I have a whole chapter on Seoli legends in which I found so many diverse and different things. And it's very difficult to know which started. Most of them have started, I think, in worshipping the earth and then,
Yes.
gone to different things. Same with Sanjang, with Seoli,
Yeah.
we have, it's supposed to be the feast of John the Baptist where he baptized Jesus by putting him in the River Jordan. So people jump in wells, and there's the traditional boat parade. People wear these flower crowns, which are very similar to what you have in Europe in this whole, midsummers kind of thing. Then I think jumping in the wells to get Feni. Also, this whole, drama like the Zagors, where you go with musical instruments and you. So I realized I learned a lot about Seoli and Goa through that chapter.
What is the significance of the son-in-law thing that happens for Sanja in Shirley?
So, I mean, with all these things, I have looked up many, spoken to many people, referenced many things. I don't know what is true, but I looked up the book, I think by Luz, I'm not sure of her whole name, I've got it, in which she says that apparently some son-in-law was not he was not introduced to the village, and he when going back he died, and they wanted it to be this time that they introduced all the son-in-laws. Now that's one version. There's another version which again it's a fertility thing where you offer sons-in-law and newly married, fruit and things like that. So I don't know the answer to it, but it is important that sons-in-law in Seoli and the traditional boat parade, which I think is different to other
Yes.
villages. But the traditional boat parade and the whole Sanjao in Seoli has now got so commercial that people who were there originally, they say it's horrible, it's commercial, it's not the original flavor of what it was about. I think it's similar to the carnival you mentioned in your book. You described the carnival in great garish, gaudy detail, and I think it's an important point for Tara Salgaonkar in her, confrontation with all the demons she's grappling with. So tell us about the carnival and your experience in Goa.
My memories of it. See, what happens is to Bombay Goans, like I'm a Bombay Goan, like we're called Bomaikars. So we only come here during summer vacations, and usually that's, carnival happens mid-Feb. It's going to happen now, or in the early days of March. So you miss it because your school exams will be over by end of March, and you land up here in April, May. So you miss the carnival, and all your Goan cousins will tell you, you know what, you have to see it. You guys miss it. And there was always this thing built up, carnival, carnival, you've got to see it. So when I came back in 2003, I'd already missed the carnival because I came in like June or something. So my first actual carnival was 2004. And by then it had got corporatized, and Kingfisher was the sponsor. And I just remember so much of thermocol. I mean, the entire logo on most of the floats, I think they had some two, three
There's still
floats.
lots of thermocol,
Yeah,
Bina.
it still is. Oh. So, and the fun bit is, which I didn't know, was the same floats go for all the parades. So in 2004, there were only four parades, four cities. Now there are, I think, six or seven. So they start off very nice and shiny in Panjim on the first day. And by the time they reach Mapsa, like everything is coming apart. And I really don't know how those dancers dance. I mean, I don't know what happens now. They might be just scrolling through their phones and taking selfies. But yeah, so the first carnival was quite a disappointment. But the best carnival I saw was 2008. I don't know if many of you guys saw that. That was the year GTDC had a tie up with the Brazilian embassy. And they got two samba schools from Rio to take part in the Goan Carnival. Now, GTDC was a client, I used to design for them. And suddenly, once the word got out, as you can imagine, all the Goans were like, oh my God, now we're going to have naked women walking on the roads just like Rio. And they're going to be naked dancers. And so I had to actually do an ad which said, don't worry, Rio will change for Goa. So they were going to comply with Indian tradition, I mean, Indian cultural norms, even though Goa is the most liberal place as far as, attire goes. Uh, so one interesting thing happened, and if I have the time, I can say that. So they had a float which was going to show the Brazilian goddess of the sea. I think she's called La Manja. And they were auditioning these young Goan girls to play her. And as you would imagine, these stick thin models came like tall, skinny, fair, long hair, even short hair. And they just weren't getting the right woman. The Brazilian team who was sitting here, they were like, no, no, not right, not right. Finally, the executive assistant to the MD, who is this amazing woman called Thelma Moses. I don't know how many of you know her. She's tall, she's statesque, she's voluptuous. She was a mother of grown-up kids. They looked at her and they were like, that's our goddess. And I was so happy about that. So Thelma Moses became the goddess of the sea, and that was the best carnival to date. There wasn't too much of thermocol. It was really well done. And the clothes were fantastic. They were not the horrible frills that I talk about in my book, where this is my observation. Like every year, it's just the colors of the frills that change. It's usually white and blue, white and green, white and orange,
Pink.
white and pink.
Yeah.
And one year they went into polka dots. So it was like red and white, green and white, blue and white. So yeah, so that's the.
Tell us, you mentioned your summer holidays. So tell us, like you only came during the summer
Yeah.
holidays. So tell us how your summer holidays were when you came to Goa and how it's different now.
Before I do, I'm talking a lot. Why don't you tell us about your summer
Okay,
holidays?
I also have a chapter which talks about, idyllic summer holidays in Goa when I came in the 70s and 80s, which were very different because we came on a bus from Pune. Then we took another bus to get to Seoli. There was taxis were very expensive. I guess nothing has changed in that way. So
We'll talk about what still remains the same a little bit later.
yeah. And I mean, Seoli was a very different place. We drew water from the well. There was no electricity. There were no walls, no gates. I think we used to come to eat mangoes and coconuts and all this exotic fruit and go to the beach, which was a big thing. You took a bus, you went to Kalangut, that was the only beach to go to. You met other people who had come from Bombay or
All on
Pune or
Kalangut,
whatever. You hung out. It was very cool. There were beat shows sometimes because it was always in May. Um, I think, and there were no restaurants. I think in Kalangut there was maybe Suza Lobo, and then we walked to Baga. There was Saint Anthony. Now in Seoli there are more restaurants and cafes and bars than you can imagine. But they've come at a price in terms of there's no parking. There's so much of construction where no sewage system, water tankers, water shortage, so our wells are getting polluted, the so much the garbage collection. So I think for me the contrast was really huge. So I've written these two chapters. One is like idyllic holidays and the other is urban rural purgatory.
So for me, just like you, my memories are, and I think when you're a child, you kind of, what you remember, you also gloss over, you make it seems magical. So I have memories of coming via the steamer ship route, so Konkan Sevak and Konkan Shakti from Bhautsa Dakka, and that huge welcome to Goa board that would be in Panjim, where now there are casinos. So my welcome to Goa is gone, and my dad is from Para and my mom is from Shora. So I have like memories of the ancestral house, which still exists, uh, and there being white sand outside.
Even in Para?
In Para.
Wow.
And it was like 3 to 4 kilometers away from Kalangut or even Anjuna, and there used to be white sand. And it was such a sleepy village. But even in 2003, when I came here, Para was very sleepy. And in 2012, when I was at Disney, I would try to explain to my friends that, I live in Para, and they would be like, where is that? Today, I have to ask those friends, please tell me which is the most happening place in Para where I can go to eat. So that's the change, and yeah, I mean there's a Pilates studio on
I
that
just
road.
passed it on
Yeah,
my way here.
there's a gym that my own cousin brothers opened,
Okay.
and I mean it's changed. At one time, anybody would like which Goan woman went to a gym? It was housework that was your exercise.
That's
you
true.
know.
I
So
think even now, I mean, there's a lot of work between your dogs and your
yeah.
garden, and uh, mangoes have fallen, coconuts have fallen, whose dog has chased who, what is happening, are you painting your house, who is the painter? So I think it's a very busy life because people assume, oh, you're living in Goa, you must be lying on the beach, you must be having such a nice, Susegad life. And really, the village life is not. It's a
It's not.
lot of hard work. And I think because of all those questions, I wrote this chapter called Juggling the Joys and Challenges of Managing a House in Goa. Because people don't realize, I think, when you buy a house or you move to Goa for this, beautiful idyllic life, I think you don't realize that there are monkeys, there are snakes,
Yes.
there are squirrels, there are so many. We have monitor lizards, we had a tortoise. I mean, the beauty is you have a beautiful garden, there are butterflies, there are beautiful birds. But there are also many other things that go into maintaining, which I think many people who move here and buy properties, they're not aware of the whole picture of the Goan
True.
village life.
True. So yeah, that's one thing. I have a lot of friends who have moved here recently, and they keep calling me and they keep asking me what to do about snakes. You live with them. What can you do? What to do about lizards and monitor lizards? You live with them. I mean, if you eliminate them, then you're going to have rats and you're going to have cockroaches and exactly all those things that you ran away from to come to Goa. And everybody wants manicured lawns and everybody wants swimming pools. You
True,
have
true,
one
true,
thing.
true. So I think I have one chapter about how Asagam became Gurgaon, which is a controversial
Yeah, that's
and
heartbreaking.
popular chapter. But I think I mean, at least people in Goa believe that, oh, if you moved here and you integrate with the community, you're welcome. But if you have these high walls with security guards and security cameras, you're keeping the villagers out. And the Goan village life is you sit on the balcony and you see the world go by, which is a good thing and a bad thing, I suppose. Uh, but the problem is, they say people come from Delhi. Delhi people get a bad name. It's anyone who moves to Goa. And you want this house with the swimming pool, with the paddy view that has peacocks. And I think the issue with swimming pools is the water, given the water shortage we're facing, and villages like Asagaon, they are dependent on water tanker. I know Ponburi, many other villages, because there's a real water problem, and even if you have a well, it's been poisoned because there's no sewage system. So, the soak pits are so close in terms of all this construction. So I think that's the dilemma that we face in terms of we are urbanizing and Goa is developing fast, but it's at a cost to the everyone who lives here.
In your third chapter, what's so special about Goa anyway, you've given a checklist and it's hilarious and I was like rolling on the floor. So I and checking how do I measure up. So please read out because it's fun for everybody.
Okay, I'm going to read from my book this chapter called What's So Special About Goans Anyway. So I say I have spent extended amounts of time over the last 20 years in Seoli before moving here full time. Over this period, I have made some anecdotal observations and have manufactured my own criteria for being Goan. I need to emphasize that these are all tongue in cheek observations, while there is much research on Goans, our history, migration, and diaspora. I rely on none of them. Also, here I'm talking about Goans as the true salt of the earth, children of the soil avatar living in the village, not the global diaspora who may identify as Goans in spirit but may have never lived here, or the more sophisticated Goans living in cities. I fulfill some of these criteria, but I aspire to all. You speak Konkani. Yeah, you are good. Yeah. You notice car number plates and are suspicious of every car that does not have a Goa registration. You have at least two dogs and or two cats. You may also have some pigs, hens, goats, and cows. You eat fish at least 5 days a week, if not seven, and you know what is seasonal, how it needs to be cooked, fried, or curried. You know what fish is available in the market that day. You know how much it costs and how fresh it is just by looking at the gills. You know when all the religious festivals take place and how they are to be celebrated, the prayers, the customs, and what to cook. There are a few every month, all celebrated with great pomp and pageantry, food, music, and flowers. You can recognize not just the fruit but also the leaves of the mango trees in your neighborhood. You know not only your own trees but also your neighbor's trees. Who has the best Mankurad, Magilad, Maldes, Bishop of Fernandino? You track the flowers every year. You covet your neighbor's Mankurad tree, even breaking a commandment. You know which mangoes are to be cut and eaten, which ones are used to make the popular koram, miskut, or mangar. This also extends to other tropical fruit and berry trees, jackfruit, jamun, bimli, tamarind, and karvanda. You have an encyclopedic knowledge of all local flora and fauna and can identify birds and their sounds. You know exactly when the Urak Feni season supply starts each year, and you have the best source. You drive for hours to get it, but it's worth it. You brag about your source, but you don't share the contact as it's a closely guarded secret. You insist that only yours is genuine, the real stuff. You sing with great gusto in the shower, in church, at all celebrations, in a choir or in a band. You play at least one musical instrument, usually a piano, guitar, violin, or drums, and love music. You have a love hate relationship with your neighbors and your family. You either not talking to them or you know too much about them or both. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer is the mantra you follow. You know all your living and dead relatives, at least up to the last 5 generations, who married whom, who was supposed to marry whom, where they live, when and where someone died, where they are buried, and so on. You also know these details, including any scandals and dirt about all your neighbors and friends. You know how to make or who in the village makes the best coconut oil, sausages, vinegar, bibinka, shakuti, and samarachi masala. You know which gado has the best street food, cutlet pav, choris pav, roast omelette, or patal bhaji for breakfast in your village or state. You have no interest in any other food or cuisine and look dismissively at new restaurants and cuisines as they debut in Goa. You have a good appetite for and very strong opinions on local politics that you're always willing to share. You get your news only from local papers, usually O Heraldo, and news channels, often prudent media. You attend more funeral than wedding masses, and you wear black for funerals. Lorna belting out Babe Doe is your favorite anthem. You religiously follow and play football and support Brazil in the World Cup.
Portugal also.
You have a that's in your list, Davina. You have a healthy distrust for all outsiders. An outsider is a generic term used in Goa that covers anyone who is not Goan by ancestry. It does not discriminate based on socioeconomic status, how long you've lived here, if you speak Konkani, have the required legal government identification and documentation, or own property. It's somehow beyond that.
That's a good checklist. Yeah, it deserves applause. Okay. Michelle, I want to say a couple of things about your chapter. Some of them are so detailed that they deserve to be books on their own. So I hope you're going to do that. In particular, chapter 9, The Devil is in the Details of Portuguese Property Law. What is the kind of research you did for this?
So, Bina, actually, I don't know whether it's a blessing or a curse, but I had to figure out transferring ancestral property on both my mother's and my father's side. And with both, it was so complicated that each had some completely different rules that you had to follow, whether you have a will, then there was inventory proceedings, succession proceedings, partition documents, and each time I got, all the documents together, the lawyer would say, no, this has happened. Or someone in my family on that tree would die, somebody would get married, so I would have to start again. So it was, I mean, I spent so much of time on this, which does not benefit me in any way, that I thought, let me at least use this in my book, let me use it somehow. So mine is only from my experience, and I think everyone I have met who is Goan or has property have had a completely different experience. And so I think people's grandfathers, great grandfathers, or whatever left Goa generations ago because there were no opportunities here. So you went for the better life. And the property lay here, and then either, you know, people sold it, gave it away, it was encroached, different things happened. If you tried to transfer it, you had to track down. It's always in some male, whatever, grandfather, great grandfather's name. Then you have to figure out all your relatives. It's a good thing because the property law follows what's, I think, it's followed apparently all across continental Europe, the Napoleonic Code. So sons and daughters inherit equally, and when you get married, your spouse also inherits. So all of these are good things on paper, but when you actually go to transfer the property, it becomes very complicated. You have to contact all these people. Many people don't know who they are, where they are. As we have seen, we may be best friends with them, people are not talking to them, then so it became very complicated. I did a fair amount of research, but it was mainly from my own perspective. Okay. Everybody I meet, like recently I was in Pune, promoting my book, and some old neighbors who I hadn't seen for many times, they came and they wanted to tell me details on how much effort they had. So I think everybody has a story. I tried to make it, it's very intimidating if you're not a lawyer and you don't understand legally. So I try to make it more anecdotal in terms of what happens and how it happens. Also, many people who I know from Pune and other places, they had given away ancestral property to charitable institutions like convents and things like that. Now, I meet nuns in Seoli who are still trying to transfer the property, and they deal with encroachment and many things. So I realized that everybody who has any ancestral property in Goa, you face this kind of thing. So I felt it was important to write a chapter because on the other hand, you see, so many apartments and villas coming up, and they seem to be able to get the property papers, well as people like me really struggled. So
Yeah,
I thought it
because
was important to write the chapter.
and that's one of the reason why the even Goans now are trying to, like, the ones coming from Bombay or elsewhere, trying to move into clear houses, as we call it, like, and that would be through a builder, because he's got the time and the funds to follow this crazy trail.
Clear title, because when
Yes,
I was writing, the editors were like, "What is clear title?"
clear
I had to
title.
spend a lot of time writing to explain what is clear title.
And yeah, and some things we just take them for granted. Like, I know what a succession is, I know what a partition deed is, clear title, clear this, and no one else outside of Goa knows this. And we just use it as part of speech.
True, and also if you're a Goan who has not lived in Goa, not brought up in Goa, living somewhere else with this ancestral property, like many of my family, my cousins, uncles, and aunts, they don't know what I'm talking about. And then I realized that I am becoming Goan as I was going
Yes.
about this, because now I knew all these words, and trying to explain it to them, it was very difficult. Even, like my will or my father's will, I spoke to a friend who's a lawyer in Pune. They're like, Michelle, I don't know what this is about. This is very different to the law in Pune.
Yeah.
So I think because of the
Yes.
property law here, it's difficult to follow and to
Yeah.
understand. So this is, I mean, it's anecdotal and it's factual from my point of view, but it's very complicated and nuanced.